Okay, so sorry about that. I am having a hell of a time going live today. I have just had about as much technical difficulties as you could possibly have. So give me a second as I try and get some more people. Okay. All right, so I'll update the thingamajig later, the title later. But today we're going to talk about a topic about who your client is. And so, I put together this sort of long dissertation about, how do you discover who your client is and all that. And I've decided after listening to one of my besties, Ashlyn Ray, talk about how you really ought to be more of yourself and not so stringent and strict about how you deliver your content. And so I'm going to take heed to that message that she gave earlier today and really just sort of talk to you guys off the cuff. I have a couple of pointers that I want to go through, but for the most part, I just kind of want to tell you some really important things that you need to consider, why you need to identify who your ideal client, give you some examples of how I've had some experience with that and working with some of my clients, what they've experienced before and after identification of who their perfect client is. Okay. So let's start off and talk about why is it even important for you to know who you're talking to? So I'm going to tell you when I first opened up my salon back in 2009, which is always a good story because I learned so much about running a business. Even though I had already had a business 3 years prior to that, we had opened our first business in 2006. We opened up a barbershop and I did all the marketing for that barbershop. And as luck would have it, I really just sort of think that things fell into place and I was sort of new to the whole marketing thing. And although I had done it in my corporate job, marketing my small business was a whole lot different than marketing the marketing that I had done in my business prior. But so we're going to kind of rewind back to 2009. And when I opened up I'm going to tell you kind of what the idea was. I had knew that I wanted to open up a salon, but I didn't want it to be like every other salon. I knew that I wanted it to be a niche salon that was focused on natural hair. I knew back in 2009 that there was a lot of women who were transitioning and that, there were products that were being created and there was a lot of, that buzzword was all over the beauty industry at that time, at least in the African American space, right? Black community. Natural hair salon was new, right? Everybody was transitioning. They were getting rid of, they were saying goodbye to the creamy crack. They were doing all that. So I wanted to open up a salon. My mom was in the business. We had opened up the barbershop. I knew that I was good at marketing. I knew that I was going to start doing hair full time. And I said, okay, I'm going to do a natural hair salon. And so spent a lot of time on actually, building out the salon. And if you know my story, I talk a lot about how I'm really good at opening businesses. I'm really good at designing the space, designing the flow of how the traffic was going to do, designing the website, just designing the space and preparing for launch. And I always back then did thought about my customer and how I was going to drive my customer sort of secondary. It wasn't a natural thing for me back in the early 2000s. I was really focused on, okay, what is the business and what are my products and services and what am I going to offer? And I'm going to build it and they are going to come. That was my mindset then. I was really, really focused about making it look really good, making it look really pretty, and making sure that all my T's were crossed and all my I's were dotted and all that. So I opened up the salon in 2009 and hired people. Like it was I think I had 6 chairs. I hired four girls, and they were going to be hourly, and I was working full time, so I knew that I would be funding. I knew that there would be a cash inflow into the business, and I had this shit down. Like it was great. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful space. It had anything that you could imagine that you wanted. Like I pretty much threw into this business. But did zero marketing, did zero client identification, like didn't know really my client base. I knew that I was servicing natural hair women, but I didn't really do any market research. I just knew as a Black woman who was transitioning what I liked, but I didn't know my client. So I opened up, right? I opened up. I thought I did everything right. Like I had the employees. I had a great location. I had a great space. I had, it was all that I could dream of in terms of what it aesthetically looked like, and opened up, and we didn't have one client for an entire month. I think we had one client walk through the door in that first month. Now, mind you, I wasn't behind the chair. I wasn't doing hair, but I had staff. I had 3 people I was funding, and every day I'd come in and be like, hey, did we get a client? Did you go out there and, did you meet anybody? What did you guys do? Not one client did we have walk through that door for an entire 30 days. I'm sorry, I lied. We had one client walk through the door. It was the mother of one of the staff members. She bought, I don't know, some hairspray or something that we were selling, and that was it. I was floating employee salaries for 4 weeks because we paid by the week or whatever. And I'd done no research. I'd done no marketing. I'd done nothing. And so I tell you the story because I meet a lot of people who are in the same position, right? Who they have spent a lot of time building their business. So when I hear people tell me, oh my God, I'm starting this new salon, or I'm starting this new business, my first thing is that's nice and great, but shit, what the hell are you doing to market the business, right? Because I've been there and I've done it. I've done it myself. I've started a business focused on just marketing the business and didn't do anything in terms of, I wasn't even focused on marketing. I just built the business. I was just focused on my services, my products, making it look nice, making sure that everything was beautiful and it was all prim and proper, but I did nothing in terms of marketing. So today's topic, now that I've set the stage, is all about how do you identify who your ideal client is. So from this lesson, I had to learn, okay, if we were going to stay in business, I was going to have to do more than just work in the business of making it look pretty. I was going to have to let people know that we were here, right? That we were available for services, that I was the new kid on the block, right? And it's funny, I remember going down the street and I bought this leather couch, and I bought a used leather couch and I needed to refinish it. So I went down the street and I went to a leather store and I asked the guy, and I was like, hey, we're opening up a new business on the street. And, he's telling me about the local chamber and if I was a member. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, what's your business? And I said, oh, we're a salon. I was so super proud. I was like, yeah, I'm opening up a salon. And he looked at me and he goes, another salon? I was like, but no, I'm a different salon. Like I am different, right? And I couldn't even really explain to him. Like I knew how I was different, but I couldn't really explain to him how I was different. Granted, this guy was an old guy. He wasn't my ideal client, but I wasn't even prepared to really talk about how amazingly different I was going to be from the other 7 salons on our street alone. 7 salons, mind you, on our street. Now, I will tell you that it doesn't matter to me if there's 7, 10, 20 of the same businesses on the same street, as long as you differentiate yourself and you are really clear about who you're speaking to. It doesn't matter who your competitors are, as long as you can differentiate yourself. And that's what I focused on after that first month of royal fail that I did. Okay, so let's talk about what did I do, right? So did a couple of things. I My saving grace was I really dug deep. I started interviewing every natural hair woman I could find. What were the things that they were concerned about? Were the things that they didn't like about their stylist or their products or the services that they were getting? And I found three key things that were really important. So everything that I did in terms of my messaging. And the other thing that I did is I actually started advertising the salon on Facebook. This is back in 2009 and 10, when Facebook ads had just started. I actually started advertising our natural hair salon on Facebook and got amazing results. But in order for me to do that, I had to really understand who I was talking to. Like, what was the images that were important to them? What was the message that they wanted to hear so that I could speak to how I could fix that or I could address that. And so there were three things that I found in my research when I was looking for this natural hair woman, in the Frisco area. Because again, I wasn't, national, right? I was only trying to service a specific vicinity, local area. And I needed to really understand how could I speak to that person? So, I had to figure out what I needed to say to them or what did they like? And I had to find them because I was doing Facebook ads. So what did I do? My first thing is I created what I now know is called a client avatar. I wrote down every single characteristics about a woman who was transitioning, not a woman who had already transitioned, but a woman who was transitioning from relaxed hair to natural hair. And that process of me writing down the characteristics is exactly what you need to do in development of your ideal client. And why was that important? For me, it was important for a couple of things because I needed to know how me as a natural hair salon, how I could service her and how could I talk to her so she would come into my place of establishment. And so what I found is that particularly back 7 years ago, women who were transitioning, what they were doing is they were doing a lot of do it themselves, right? They were watching a lot of YouTube, and there's still a lot of customers who do that. If you're in the beauty industry, you might find that that's your competitor is people who like to do it themselves. But what I was finding when I was interviewing and I did that market research is that those women were frustrated with doing their own hair, right? They didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to transition. They didn't know how to style it. They were getting mixed messages from all of these people in the internet to do this way, to do this way, use this product, use that product, don't do this, don't do that. So how I positioned myself as an expert in that field is I gave a person a place to come to be able to, one, take a break from doing it themselves, two, be able to get great styles for their hair so that they would look great in that transition, either by having styles that were great for transitioning or great protective styles. So that was the message that I was able to garner or figure out when speaking to these clients through my market research and through identification of the characteristics of my ideal client. Why is that important? Well, it allowed me to identify what to say to her. It allowed me to identify what was important to her, what were her goals with her hair. It allowed me to identify what she was struggling with, right? What she needed. She needed a break, right? She needed relief. She needed guidance that was going to be specific to her hair, right? I also identified where were they getting their messages from, right? At this time, back in 2009, Curly Nikki was big. She had just come on the scene, but she was getting a following like nobody's business. So I attached my audience to people who were following Curly Nikki. Miss Jessie's hair product was another big line of hair product that natural hair women were using or attempting to use as their first product. I used that product in the salon, gave my own feedback to clients as they came in, also in my ads. I think I also looked for people who followed Carol's Daughter. Those were two really big name brands that allowed me to identify an audience of people who were, one, interested in products, two, were natural hair lovers or were transitioning themselves, and three, I could identify them by a local area. So by identifying the products and services that were important to these natural hair women, I was able to identify my market, to identify who they were listening to and looking at from a guru perspective, allowed me to identify and find them on Facebook through my ads. So sources of information was really important. Goals, their demographics, right? So I knew for me that I was looking for a woman who was between the age of, who was working, she was corporate America, so she needed to have a certain look. She was of a certain age. She was African American. So all of those characteristics about my ideal client at that point when I had the salon allowed me to find her when I was doing ads. It also allowed me to speak to her. It allowed me to talk about how my salon would solve her problems. So when I first started out there doing advertising, I just sort of did like a radius. Like I was just doing a radius in my local area. I think it did like 25 miles out, and I was looking at people who are 25 miles out, and I wasn't getting really a lot of response. But when I started to pick at that and started to, again, identify what were her goals, what was important to her, who was she following, what were her demographics, so the standard demographics, age, sex, ethnicity, income level, that kind of stuff, what kind of products was she following, who was the buyer, right? Because I was also after kids because we did braiding services. So I was looking for women who had children, right? So all of those characteristics became important marketing tactics for me to be able to identify my ideal client when I was actually doing paid advertising. So it wasn't that it was just important for me to know. It was a tool that I was able to use when I found my ideal, when I did my paid advertising, when I was finding her in the audience of people. Now, fast forward 7 years up. Now you got Facebook ads on steroids, and you can search down to the time, their birthday, right? When their birthday is, if they have any birthday months, like if you want to do a birthday special on Facebook and you want to run an ad against people who are having a birthday in the month of July or in the next 2 weeks, you can do that, right? So you can get to that micro level on your Facebook ads comparatively than you could 9 years ago, whatever time it was. And so I tell you, the importance of building that client profile is critical to your business because, one, it allows you to stop wasting time with trying to advertise or to market to everybody. You have a particular product and service that, even though you may think it's valuable for everyone, if you identify a very specific person you want to talk to, it'll make it very easy for you to create messages. And so let me give you another example. When you are selling it to, and I'm going to use hair services as an example because that is a product that's near and dear to my heart. So when I'm selling hair services to an 18-year-old versus a 30-year-old, how I talk to that 18-year-old is a whole lot different than I talk to that 30-year-old, right? The pictures that I use for an 18-year-old is a lot different than the pictures that I use for a 30-year-old, right? The messages and even the way that I decide to advertise to an 18-year-old may be different than I decide to advertise for a 30-year-old because the mediums and the places that they're at and the things that are important to them, their goals, their likes and dislikes, who they follow, may be two entirely different people. So the importance of identifying who you're speaking to allows you to get a clearer picture of what you need to do. Now, Granted, if I am selling, let's say I'm selling roofing services, right? I'm not going to want to find somebody who's in an apartment, right? I'm going to want to find somebody who owns a house or is rent or who owns a house, right? So I want to know people who are homeowners. I don't want to advertise or waste my dollar on advertising to somebody who lives in an apartment or a townhome or a property that they don't own, that they're not responsible for the roof, right? So that's a perfect example, right? But when you do radio ads and when you do TV ads and those types of ads, you're not really able to narrow down your niche or who you're talking to like you can with Facebook ads. So with Facebook ads, you can actually narrow down that I want to only talk to or deliver my ads to homeowners who are between the ages of 35 and 55, right? Who live in Texas in a particular area, who just possibly got hit by a hailstorm, right? That, and I will tell you, that's a perfect example because we were hit by horrible hailstorms a couple months ago, and I started getting ads in my news feed almost the next day after that hailstorm and through that entire week from roofers who were trying to pick me up. The problem is that they didn't have me identified, and they didn't market me properly because I wasn't their ideal client. So I tell you that to say that it's important for you to understand who you're speaking to, what it is that is important to them, the characteristics about to them, so that you can make really clear marketing messages to them and for them so that you can get better return on every advertising and every marketing event activity that you do, primarily if you're doing paid advertising through Facebook. So let's talk about how do you do that. Let me take a sip. Building a client avatar includes 5 key areas. So 1, it's understanding their goals. 2, it's understanding their sources of information. 3, it's understanding their demographics. And then 4, understanding what's important to them and where they are in the buying process is the last thing. So hopefully you understand now why it's so important to build that client avatar, that you will do so in the future. I have a client avatar worksheet that you can get below, and that I'll include the link. Actually, it's going to be above this video, the link to that worksheet. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know and I will help you get that out. Do not forget to follow me on Wednesdays, where I will be giving you great marketing tips on how to market your business, small business, online or offline. And then also don't forget to check the events calendar to see what great events. We've got some amazing guest speakers that are coming on in the month of July. Look at the events calendar to see what we've got going on. I look forward to talking to you soon. This is the Marketing Boss Pro Sunday. Bye.